Hey everyone, welcome back to the lab. In this video, we're going to be talking about how I host my server-side rendered F# site on Google Cloud for less than $1 per month. So I recently migrated my sites from SvelteKit to F# and did a review of how much money my projects made versus how much they cost. In this post, I wanted to dive into how much it costs me to run this site on Google Cloud. Let's start with the site overview. So my site is mostly static content using server-side rendered HTML built with F# and Giraffe.view engine, which is an HTML DSL. This means it doesn't really do that much work and doesn't need that much infrastructure, really just a server it can run on and will accept connections. For an idea of scale, my sites get approximately 50,000 views a year, which comes out to about 0.002 requests per second, which is quite small in software terms. Yes, this traffic isn't continuous, so it has regular spikes and dips above that number, but we can assume it's still pretty small. I would guesstimate probably the most I ever get is like 10 requests per second on average for like peak times a day, which again is like super easy to handle with a small server. All right, so that's what my site is, and now let's talk about how I host my site. So I run my site on Google Cloud Run, which is a serverless managed container service on GCP. It works by spinning up a container image of my site when a request comes in. That container is then kept running to serve subsequent requests and then goes to sleep after a few minutes if no more requests come in. And I think the default time is like 10 or 15 minutes, but this is configurable if you want it like more or less. I like this setup because it's easy to use. So it's very simple to spin up a container and you don't have to deal with server setup or configuration. It's really just serverless. And the way I kind of think of this is like, imagine you just got a box and it already had like Docker installed and you could just send the box or send your container over there and it just builds it and runs it. That's how easy it is. And obviously a lot of people like VPSs and it's relatively easy these days to set up Docker, but then you got to deal with like what ports are open, all this other stuff. With this, it's like server already set up for you. Just give me your Docker container. So super easy to use. The next thing it's good at is it's flexible. So because it runs containers natively, you can run anything you can run in a container, which is basically anything. And this is why I love containers. A lot of people are like, oh, it's too much faff. I'm like, this is how computing should work, okay? You get a container, you can put anything in it, and then you can run that thing anywhere. Like that is what computing should be. We don't need any of this complex stuff. It really just needs to be that. Like this same approach works for basically any use case. And I've previously run things like C# and SvelteKit and static Hugo sites in the same manner. So it really works across a lot of use cases. Now there's obviously some use cases that like I wouldn't recommend. Like I probably wouldn't put my database in something like this because the database is probably better off just continually running if you have a server of, enough traffic just to deal with connections and setup and stuff like that. But once you're on something like this, which is already container native, it's very easy to move from container native, scale to zero Cloud Run to something else like a cloud engine that's dedicated. And so this portability works like, with scale up and out and also flexibility scale. So the next reason I like this is because it's scalable. So my sites don't get that much traffic, but it's nice to know that I could scale big if I wanted. GCP is a fully equipped cloud, so planet scale is always an option. And this is a big one for me because I always like to build simple scalable systems. And the reason scalable is in this heuristic is because if you have a simple system, but it only works for this one use case, it doesn't scale to other use cases, it doesn't scale to more load that you would expect, then it's actually not a good system because you've basically made it deprecated as soon as you wrote it. And so even if you don't need this scalability, you need to keep in mind a path to get there. Otherwise, you're just making additional problems for you down the road. And the whole idea of composability, simplicity, and stuff is to prevent problems down the road. Next reason I like this is because it's cheap. Cloud Run is scaled to zero, so I only really pay when people are using my site. Because my usage is low, I mostly fall under the free tier and pay very little. I find this gives me a nice balance of ease of use, high scalability, and low cost, a simple scalable system, if you will. And I also want to call out, because this is serverless, I get a lot of questions of why I don't use serverless functions. And I think serverless functions would work fine, but the problem for me is the scalability part. And I should probably have a whole nother post and video on this. But the problem with serverless functions is that you're paying a lot more per unit of compute. And so all of these subsequent requests, it actually doesn't scale very well. And you'll see this all the time if you read postmortems about why people move off of functions, is because the idea of unlimited scale and low cost is actually completely false as soon as you move away from like one request per second. So that's why it's that kind of scalable portion in the future. Obviously it doesn't matter to me now, but that's my thinking there. All right, on to how much it costs. So here is a screenshot of my Google Cloud billing dashboard. And it's just got each of the services that I'm using for my HAMY.xyz project. So we got here cloud storage, cloud run, and then artifact registry are the only services I need to host my site. And so hosting my site in 2023 cost me about $6.70, which comes out to about 56 cents per month. Cloud storage cost me $4, so it's about 60% of my costs. And this is things like static file hosting for stuff like images and videos I use in post embeds. For instance, this is hosted on cloud storage, and then I embed it, and this is how we're getting it into my site. Cloud Run cost me $2.63, which is about 39% of my costs. And this is for actually running my code and serving my site. So when your request comes in, we're spinning up that container, and that container stays alive. I'm paying for that cost of the container being alive and it sending you data. Artifact registry cost me about 5 cents, which is about 1%. And this is for building my containers and storing them for use in Cloud Run. So you can imagine every time I like create a new post, it's got to download the container and rebuild it so it knows that the post is inside of it. I use static posts. There are other ways to do this, but that's how I do it. And so it needs to keep that container image somewhere so that it can actually use it when a request comes in. It needs to spin up a new server. Now note that this is the price that I actually paid out of pocket, but it includes discounts like credits and the free tier. And I find that most clouds use this to try and make it seem cheaper than it is. And this is how they kind of get you locked in early as you're like an early stage startup, so that when you start like using all the features, your costs kind of like exponentially increase. And I don't love that. I think it's like a shadow tactic. Like, yes, it's good, I pay less, but like, I think it's not totally true. And so I wanted to also share how much it would have cost me if those discounts weren't there, to kind of give you a better mental model of what doing something like this would cost at scale and for an average builder. So like if you wanted to just use standard multiplication or whatever for your own traffic or your own site or services, that would work better for you. And so here is a screenshot of my Google Cloud billing as well without the discounts. And so without discounts, my site costs would have been about $10.36 for the year, or about 87 cents per month. And here we see cloud storage is $6.32, which is 61%. Cloud Run is $4 at 39%. And then artifact registry is still only 5 cents, which is basically 0%. And so still not bad, $10 for hosting my sites for a year, especially compared to the value that I get out of it, is like, a steal. But this is still 50% more expensive than the one with the tier. So just wanted to share this so you kind of have this in perspective. Next. So overall, I've had a really good experience with Google Cloud Run. I've been using them for years to host my own side projects and would recommend them for others as well. I'm not totally sure how it would work at scale, especially with a site or service that gets a lot of traffic, as I've never done that myself. And I can see how the cost could go up dramatically if it never scaled to zero. But for my purposes, it works well and costs little for the value I get out of it. My guess is that there's probably some like extra costs that Google Cloud is charging you for the scale to zero ability. And so my guess is if you're probably getting more consistent traffic across the board, it might work better to run on a more dedicated service. So let's say like Google Cloud Engine or something that still gives you the container methodology, but it's just dedicated. And my guess is that per month for an always on server, that's probably going to cost a bit less. But only obviously if you're using, the entire month or whatever. I haven't done the cost yet, but that's my hypothesis. And I'll probably be exploring some other hosting options this year as I play around with building more projects. And especially if some of these projects end up getting more traffic. And so I start getting away from the ability to scale to zero. So stay tuned to that if you're interested in that. And definitely let me know if you have some clouds you're interested in or clouds you've enjoyed, because I would love to explore ones that are actually potentially good. So that'll help me kind of, direct where I'm going. If you like this video, you might also like migrating my sites from SvelteKit to F#, my whole journey, and includes a lot of different stats of like what changed from SvelteKit, kind of like more client-focused things, to F# more server-focused. You can also check out the HAMY Burger, which is my 2023 tech stack. Going into 2024, it is mostly the same. There's some tweaks, so I'll probably do another one, but it's mostly the same. That's how I've been building for several years. And then finally, you might be interested in Build a Simple Markdown blog, F#, and Giraffe, which is how I built basically this site, and gives you like the core code for all of that as well. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.